The structure of the typical essay on the impact of computers on society is as follows. First, there is an "on the one hand" statement. It tells all the good things computers have already done for society.
We found new ways to find new ideas.
We trained for things. We filled days like they were weeks. And more happened in months.
And often even attempts to argue that the social order would already have collapsed were it not for the computer revolution.
I think one of the problems in the developed world right now is we don't have enough growth. We don't have enough sustainable growth, and that's causing all sorts of problems. So I'm excited that this technology can bring the missing productivity gains of the last few decades back.
This is usually followed by an "on the other hand" caution, which tells of certain problems the introduction of computers brings in its wake.
Yet, as with any emerging technology, there are still risks and new questions that will arise as AI advances and its uses evolve.
The threat posed to individual privacy by large data banks and the danger of large-scale unemployment induced by industrial automation are usually mentioned.
But, as our digital defense team can confirm,
sometimes people use tech for bad stuff.
Some creative jobs maybe will go away, but maybe they shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Finally, the glorious present and prospective achievements of the computer are applauded.
Generative AI is delivering entirely new experiences and driving greater levels of productivity.
As intelligence gets integrated everywhere, we will all have superpowers on demand.
While the dangers alluded to in the second part are shown to be capable of being alleviated by sophisticated technological fixes.
We have put in already a lot of internal guardrails around things like adversarial usage, unwanted content, and privacy concerns.
The closing paragraph consists of a plea for generous societal support for more and more large-scale computer research and development.
Though we have learned and accomplished so much, there are still so many more opportunities to improve the lives of people around the world. We hope you join us in using AI for good.
This is usually coupled to the more or less subtle assertion that only computer science, hence only the computer scientist, can guard the world against the admittedly hazardous fallout of applied computer technology.
there's no
one big magic red button we have that blows up the data center.
which I think some people sort of assume exists, and it is the many little decisions along the way about allow this, don't allow this, how to predict what the risks of the future are going to be, how to mitigate those.
Hello there.
That passage was the opening of an article called "On the Impact of the Computer on Society: How Does One Insult a Machine?", which was published in 1972 in the academic journal Science. It was written by Joseph Weizenbaum, a computer scientist who became a professor at MIT in 1963. He was also the creator of ELIZA, a program largely known as the world's first chatbot. Despite its rudimentary nature, ELIZA garnered a lot of attention at its inception. People were enraptured by its ability to emulate human speech and understanding. Many even saw ELIZA as the first step towards automating complex human tasks, like psychotherapy. Instead of being pleased by this reception, however, Weizenbaum was disturbed. From the 1970s onwards, he became deeply critical of his field of work, of the increasingly prevailing notion that computers could be likened to humans, and vice versa. When Weizenbaum dispassionately deconstructed the common rhetoric attached to computers at the time, it was so he could open up space to really dig deep into his concerns regarding the technology. And now, 50 years later, I like to do the same for this round of artificial intelligence hype, spearheaded by the likes of OpenAI, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. To be honest, after blockchain, NFTs, and the metaverse, I really didn't want to hear about the newest installment of Black Mirror coming out of big tech. Unfortunately, the nature of generative AI has made it impossible to ignore. It's being implemented in schools, workplaces, entertainment, social media, and embedded in almost every single productivity tool on the market, including Notion, where I'm working on this script, while being hounded by the option of using its AI at every turn.
Stop it.
In the face of such fast and widespread uptake, it's hard not to give in to this narrative that the history of computing has led up to this moment.
Of the transistor, of the computer, of the internet, the semiconductor industry, all the programming languages, everything came together to produce AI technology.
That generative AI represents the start of the inevitable AI revolution. But is it really inevitable? Do the potential benefits of pursuing artificial general intelligence really outweigh all the existing negative side effects? Must we adopt or die? Okay, let's start with the basics. How much does it cost to get a generative AI product like ChatGPT up and running? The short answer is a lot. While the exact dollar amount hasn't been disclosed, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has mentioned that the training process for GPT-4 costed over $100 million. Of course, even that hefty price tag obscures everything else that goes into making this technology work. Before we get into that though, let me just say, when it comes to conceptualizing AI, I think the use of anthropomorphism is a deliberately misleading choice. Like with the term hallucinations. Hallucinations, as defined by Healthline, quote, are sensory experiences that appear real but are created by your mind. Now take this objectively wrong statement. When people call results from Gen AI models like these hallucinations, it makes it seem as if this technology messed up because it just didn't get enough sleep or something. No, this is a computer program, and it doesn't have any inherent concept of what reality is to us. I agree with the academics over at the University of Glasgow that what these models are doing is closer to bullshitting with no regard for truth. To push further away from thinking of AI in human terms, though, I thought it would be useful to establish my own, maybe a little bit convoluted, metaphor for this section. To me, generative AI is like a deity. That's also a black hole. Worship or building of one demands an endless quantity of resources, life force, caretakers, sustenance, all of which it sucks up into its mysterious inner workings. First, we need the life force, the human-generated data. Usually people refer to data as the food, but I think of it more as the essence that animates AI. All machine learning systems, which include things like speech recognition, computer vision, along with generative AI, require vast quantities of data. This is so that they have enough real-world examples to identify patterns in order to make future predictions. According to IBM, generative AI refers to deep learning models that use prompts to, quote, generate statistically probable outputs which are, quote, similar but not identical to the original data. To amass the amount of training data required, developers are using web crawlers and scrapers to plunder every corner of the internet, from Wikipedia to voter registration databases, anything that is, quote, publicly available, which is not the same thing as public domain, is on the menu.
What data was used to train Sora?
We used publicly available data and licensed data.
So, videos on YouTube?
A recent example has to do with Runway, a company that offers an AI video generating tool. Samantha Cole, writing for 404 Media, recently covered a leaked spreadsheet that aggregated training data for Runway's Gen 3 model, codenamed Jupiter. The spreadsheet includes thousands of YouTube channels, individual videos, as well as a few non-YouTube video sources. Actually, as I was slogging through this script, Samantha Cole covered another leak, this time from NVIDIA. And because I like the rule of three, here's another one from further back. The question of intellectual property, copyright, or consent seem to only matter to these tech companies when people start suing. Their MO, after all, has always been to ask for forgiveness, not permission. And, by the time you find your bearings and decide maybe you don't forgive them, well, the product is already out there, embedding itself into public life and generally wreaking havoc.
Toronto cab companies don't expect Uber to back down.
I don't think that the regulator has the sort of so-called teeth to deal with this. I don't think they understand it, and I don't think they know how to stop it.
When people started getting the option to choose whether their data got used for training AI, it mostly came as these opt-out requests that put the responsibility on the individual user. This option is also generally hidden and complicated to complete. What's more, these opt-out requests really only apply to future models. These companies can't or won't retrain the models to retroactively accommodate opt-out requests because it's not economically feasible. Therefore, there is little to be done about the terabytes upon terabytes of imagery and text that were used to train the generative AI products already out in widespread use. Man, it's like, imagine your house gets robbed and the thief tells you that the only way you might not get your shit taken again is if you politely fill out their form and describe every item you don't want them to take. It was always going to be this way. In the words of OpenAI themselves, quote, "It would be impossible to train today's leading AI models without using copyrighted materials." Now let's talk about caretakers, because getting the data is only one part of it. The system still needs the data labeled so it can be properly processed by the machine.
This is an apple.
And this is where data annotators come in. And just like traditional caretakers, it can be a brutal, thankless job. Labeled data is essential to supervised learning, which is the method used by, quote, most practical machine learning models, according to Amazon Web Services. Without it, AI models wouldn't be able to tell the difference between an apple and a strawberry, or between an open road and an oncoming train.
Oof, here it is, they're coming through, and then that's what happens. Now the owner of the car, it swerves just in the nick of time.
If you've ever selected all the traffic lights or whatever in an image grid to prove you're not a bot, you've been a data labeler helping a robot recognize things better, whether you knew it or not. While the whole process of training AI models is often described as helping it learn, when you dig into the specifics, it becomes very apparent that this learning is wholly unlike that of a human being. Milagros Micheli, leader of the research group Data, Algorithmic Systems, and Ethics at the Weizenbaum Institute, says, quote, "Where a person would get the concept of shirt with a few examples, machine learning programs need thousands, and they need to be categorized with perfect consistency, yet varied enough, polo shirts, shirts being worn outdoors, shirts hanging on a rack, that the very literal system can handle the diversity of the real world." To be clear, solving CAPTCHAs is the tip of the data annotating iceberg. When it comes to the day-to-day of an actual data annotator, the work is usually much less straightforward and much more tedious. Josh Giaja, for his fantastic investigation for The Verge, signed up to work on Remote Tasks, one of the many platforms that recruit for data annotation work. I checked out their website and it seems very low effort and barren, other than a few SEO boosting fluff in their blog section, all of which I'm pretty sure is AI generated. What's more interesting is that it's a subsidiary of Scale AI, a company that provides training and validation data for the likes of Microsoft, Meta, OpenAI, and the US military. Now with that context, let's get back into what it's like to work on remote tasks. When Josh embarked on a task that involved labeling clothes in social media photos, he was confronted with 43 pages of instructions that look like this.
Label the shoes. Label the costume. Do label real items that can be worn by real people. Do not label costumes that cannot be worn by real people.
Remember, these systems have no concept of reality. If you asked a human to draw a person in a costume, they probably wouldn't ever automatically assume you meant a toy's costume. But the AI will, unless the data is labeled in a way that makes sense to the machine. According to a 2022 Google research paper, the total number of data annotators in the world is in the, quote, millions, set to grow in billions. Given the sheer quantity of data labeling required, it is also a horribly expensive part of the process. Unfeasibly expensive, you might say, especially if you had to pay your workers a fair wage and maintained decent working conditions. Which is why the big companies have outsourced the work to those living in the global south, where workers are easier to exploit. According to the Verge investigation, remote tasks annotators based in the US generally earned between $10 to $25 per hour, while Kenya-based annotators earned between $1 to $3 per hour. For many, this work is precarious, secretive, and mind-numbing. Projects come with unpaid mandatory training you have to complete beforehand. Work pops up with demanding deadlines only to dry up with little notice. Labor, in this context, has been broken down to such an extreme degree that no one knows the why behind any of the tasks they're doing. This work can also expose you to the worst that the internet has to offer. Remember Tay, the Twitter chatbot launched by Microsoft 50 years ago? You know, the one that was taken down in less than 24 hours because it started regurgitating hateful vitriol. Well, in order to avoid the same outcome, generative AI models these days have to be able to recognize and filter out offensive content. To achieve this, however, human beings will first need to view and label thousands of toxic snippets so the program will have enough examples to work with. Billy Perigo, in his investigation for Time, reviewed contracts between OpenAI and data annotation company Sama that detailed work involving labeling, quote, textual descriptions of sexual abuse, hate speech, and violence. Until AI models get good enough to automate data annotation itself, human caretakers will continue to be an essential part of the equation, because the fact remains that these systems are not actually intelligent. In the face of new situations it doesn't have enough data on, which will continue to happen because the world is infinitely complex, it will need human caretakers to step in and tell it what to do. Now, the final piece of the puzzle, the sustenance. Your generative AI model is almost ready to spit out some racially diverse Nazis, but it can't do that without a whole lot of space, electricity, and water to keep it going. AI needs land. Anytime you save something to the cloud, or play a multiplayer game like Valorant, or commit digital necromancy because you were getting destroyed in a rap battle, you are relying on data centers. These tightly secured concrete buildings are filled with all the IT infrastructure that companies need to deliver their online services. On average, each data center takes up about 412,000 square feet. For visualization's sake, 2 average-sized data centers would take up about as much space as Buckingham Palace. And that might sound quaint, but know that, globally, there are more than 7,000 of these bad boys, either fully constructed or currently being built, with generative AI driving the boom. Some places make for particularly attractive locations for data centers to set up shop. Northern Virginia, for example, is home to Data Center Alley, a group of over 300 of these buildings that is responsible for handling over 1/3 of all online traffic. And at the same time, generating a soundscape that has been described by a resident as a, quote, loud drone hovering above 24/7. AI needs electricity. Apparently, when Google's AI overviews spat out such gems as, you should eat at least 1 small rock per day, it was using approximately 10 times the power consumption of a traditional Google search. And that's because generative AI is on a whole other level when it comes to being power hungry, requiring about 20 times more power than normal data center activities. AI's energy demands are putting increasing pressure on electricity grids, some that are already pretty unstable. Texas, another fast-growing home for data centers, is a key example. After Hurricane Beryl knocked the power out on July 8th, millions of people were forced to face days of temperatures up to 41 degrees without air conditioning, resulting in at least 23 heat-related deaths.
As temperatures soared in their home, Janet Jarrett did everything she could to keep her sister Pamela cool.
My thermostat said 97, 98, so I would open the windows trying to get breeze to go through as much as I could.
What's more, generative AI's needs are so immense that its demands match or surpass the amount of readily available renewable energy in many places, which means continued dependence on fossil fuel plants. This impact is being reflected in the environmental reports of the top players, although the true damage seems to have been muddled. Google recently revealed that its greenhouse gas emissions have jumped by 48% over the past 5 years. This is primarily due to, quote, electricity consumption by data centers and supply chain emissions. They've also admitted that achieving their goal of net zero emissions by 2030, quote, won't be easy. Oh, but don't worry, because Google recently launched a whole host of features to help you, the individual consumer, reduce your carbon footprint. Groundbreaking stuff like EV search results. Now you can see if the car you're definitely planning to buy is eligible for government incentives. Fantastic. Surely more consumption is the answer. It's fine. What matters right now is that the current energy infrastructure is unequipped to handle the glorious AI revolution that is surely on its way. The situation is so untenable that Sam Altman proclaimed that a breakthrough in nuclear fusion would be necessary for the future of artificial intelligence. He's already gone ahead and invested in one such nuclear startup.
So what do you want more than anything else in the entire world? What do I want more than anything else in this entire world? Yes. Crack. Oh.
AI needs water, and a lot of it. For one, it needs water for the cooling infrastructure that keeps the servers in the data centers from overheating and possibly catching on fire. So in 2022, Google reported that their water consumption jumped by 20% from the previous year to 5.6 billion gallons of water. The majority of that, 5.2 billion gallons, was used for the company's data centers. And for that same period of time, Microsoft reported that their water consumption had jumped by 34% to nearly 1.7 billion gallons.
That's why Microsoft's fourth sustainability commitment of 2020 is focused on reducing our water consumption and replenishing it in areas where water is scarce.
Water is also needed to manufacture the semiconductor chips that Gen AI depends on for its computing power. The thing is, lots of other things need water, like growing food. Taiwan, known for receiving abundant rain during its seasonal typhoons, has been facing low reservoir levels since 2021. The country is also responsible for manufacturing around 90% of the world's most advanced computer chips. Due to the water shortage, the Taiwanese government made the decision to shut down irrigation for huge swaths of farmland in order to preserve water for the semiconductor factories. And this has happened for 3 years in a row. So, there's a lot of talk about all the ways that the companies can make AI less resource hungry and environmentally damaging, like transitioning to greater dependence on renewable energy and using recycled water for cooling in data centers. It's a bit irrelevant to me because the fact is, in a warming world where extreme weather events have and will continue to become increasingly commonplace, Big Tech has decided that the rational thing to do is to go all in on the arms race for an experimental technology that is not only gobbling up precarious natural resources, but is also massively contributing to making our planet even warmer. Anything they do to make this technology more sustainable will still result in more damage than if they just stepped away from it completely. Now, when I put all of this together in my head, I can't really think of a situation where the payoff of this technology would be so great that it justifies its means. But if one somewhat positive thing came out of it, maybe I could have made a more balanced video. Like if generative AI made small but meaningful headway on any of its lofty promises, such as helping people augment their creativity.
We've democratized creativity. We've delivered power and precision.
Making work more fulfilling.
And really, it's a way of thinking about work that will bring the joy back into it for everyone.
Or like generally benefiting humanity at large.
Because our goal is to make AI helpful for everyone.
Well, spoiler alert, it hasn't. If you've been online in the past year or so, this is probably the most apparent and immediate consequence of this technology. AI-generated content has flooded almost every corner of the internet across all kinds of disciplines. Illustration, photography, music, writing, code, voiceover, you get it, it's fucking everywhere. We've already gone over the problematic way generative AI models procure the material it trains on, through theft. And the damage wrought by AI art has been covered very well by others already. However, I still wanted to take this moment to state the obvious, throw in my own 2 cents, because I really need the catharsis. Generative AI has not augmented human creativity. No, it has facilitated the mass production of soulless content for content's sake. Despite the fact that some of these outputs are almost identical to the original pieces of work that were obviously part of the training data, they carry the quality of something much worse. I think the idea that it's possible to automate human creation by breaking it down into data points is very gross and sad and also incorrect. Honestly, I think people who adamantly defend AI-generated content as art have, to some extent, lost touch with their humanity. Sounds harsh, maybe, but what other conclusion do you come to after seeing someone train an AI model on the life's work of an artist who's just passed away, and then have the audacity to call it an homage? To me, process is inextricable from art. That process is grounded in your own lived experiences, in the skills cultivated with time and effort, and in the genuine joy of sharing your creative expression with other people. It can be high fidelity or low fidelity, but what makes it special is the life behind it. AI-generated content is a perversion of art, nothing more.
どこへたどり着きたいんですか？人間が描くのと同じように絵を描く機械を作りたいんだ。はい。
僕はこれを自分たちの仕事をつなげたいとは全然思いません。極めて何か生命に対する侮辱を感じます。
These tools were not made for artists. They're not even really made for the dick-riding grifters. They were made for the lovely folks who will do anything to augment their bottom line. So yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like generative AI has helped workers
rediscover the soul of work.
A recent global study conducted in partnership with Upwork paints a pretty miserable picture. Corporate executives, having shoved AI into their employees' workflows, now expect a new supercharged level of productivity. Except, surprise, that's not really happening. In fact, the majority of employees said that these tools are actively hindering their work. This experience is akin to running a marathon while dragging dead weight behind you, and also the finish line keeps getting moved further away. What's up with that? This highlights a key feature of generative AI. Its outputs are still not good enough to be helpful in a wide range of use cases, but perceived to be good enough to justify cutting and de-skilling jobs. Thomas Germain, writing for the BBC, covered the story of a lead copywriter who saw his team of over 60 writers and editors dwindle after ChatGPT was forcibly integrated into their workflows. By the time it was only him left, his job had been reduced to editing articles generated by ChatGPT so that they sounded better, less like they were written by an AI. Because that's the thing with AI-generated content. It's synonymous with being low quality, so humans can't be fully automated out of the process, but they can be delegated to lower skill labor that merit less pay and worse job security. Enter the AI content editor. This type of work is popping up on freelance platforms as well. Upwork now has a specific section for AI services. Scrolling through, you might see such tantalizing opportunities like this social media content creator and manager position that pays $3 to $5 per hour. But the thing is, these jobs don't require less skill, time, or effort. Fixing AI-generated content requires a deep level of knowledge in the subject area in order to catch all the structural and factual flaws. Oftentimes, this process takes longer than just going old school and developing the work from scratch. From the quote retweets responding to that first Forbes article, this is a recurring theme across sectors, from web design to coding. It's like, imagine that you are a person who makes boats, a boat crafts person. Your boss says to you, well, now that you have access to the magic boat generator, I expect 10 times more boats from you in the same time frame, at the same quality, of course. Which sounds reasonable, except the boat generator keeps spitting out boats that have serious problems when you look at them for more than 5 seconds. Like having sails made of plastic, or steering wheels that face off of what appears to be the side of the boat. And okay, the plastic sails seem easy enough to replace, but how would you fix the steering wheel?
Charlie, having somebody making wild decisions that make no sense, that benefits nobody.
Oh, yes. Right, yes. Is he listening to us? I can't tell.
He's listening. He's not understanding.
Yeah, he doesn't even, get us, man. We're talking about you.
So that's where we're at. Workers are being displaced by a tool that mindlessly generates content, which they are then being paid pennies to fix. What's more, corporate heads from the earlier study are saying that where full-time employees are falling short, freelancers are meeting productivity demands and often exceeding them. As a result, quote, 38% of leaders who don't already leverage this talent pool intend to start in the coming year. So it seems like generative AI has furthered the alienation of labor by clearing the way for the expansion of the gig economy, exposing even more people to precarity. But it's okay, because you can always go work for the military.
Get a gig that's built to last.
Speaking of imperialism, when I was on Google's AI principles page, I saw that they have a section where they listed 4 AI applications that they won't pursue.
1. Technologies that cause or are likely to cause overall harm. Where there is a material risk of harm, we will proceed only where we believe that the benefits substantially outweigh the risks, and will incorporate appropriate safety constraints. 2. Weapons or other technologies whose principal purpose or implementation is to cause or directly facilitate injury to people. 3. Technologies that gather or use information for surveillance, violating internationally accepted norms. 4. Technologies whose purpose contravenes widely accepted principles of international law and human rights.
This stood out to me because the other companies, like Amazon, didn't have this section on their responsible AI pages. However, despite whatever they've claimed, Google is very much deploying AI for these applications. Project Nimbus is a joint contract between Google and Amazon that was signed in 2021 and is worth about $1.2 billion. It is a project that involves providing, quote, cloud computing infrastructure, artificial intelligence, and other technology services to the Israeli government and its military. An investigation conducted by The Intercept found that the AI capabilities offered through this project include facial detection, automated image categorization, object tracking, and sentiment analysis. In addition, Google has apparently been pitching Gemini to Israeli policing and national security officials earlier this year. Caroline Haskins, writing for Wired, covers the impact this project has had in the ongoing Palestinian genocide. This quote from the head of Israel's National Cyber Directorate, Gabby Portnoy, is both vague and very revealing.
Phenomenal things are happening in battle because of the Nimbus public cloud, things that are impactful for victory. And I will not share details.
So, this is a huge problem. If you've been keeping up with the news, you are probably aware that Israel is no stranger to making unrestrained use of every tool in their arsenal to survey, control, and commit unimaginable war crimes upon the Palestinian people. This includes AI. An investigation conducted by Plus 972 and Local Call in November of 2023 found how the Israeli military was using an AI-based system, a tool called Hapsora, or the Gospel, to automatically generate targets for bombing. Before this system, the military generated 50 targets in a year. With Hapsora, that number has jumped to 100 targets in one day, thus facilitating what has been called a mass assassination factory. We don't know exactly how the AI services offered through this project are being deployed. However, we do know that, outside of Project Nimbus, Google Photos' facial recognition feature has been used in this effort to generate a, quote, hit list. In fact, as one anonymous Israeli official put it, it was the most effective out of all the facial recognition tech they've used. Now, let's pull back a little, because this section isn't just about Gen AI. No, this is kind of about machine learning systems in general and how this application highlights the technology's place in the bigger picture. So I think we've established that generative AI, despite the huge amounts of data that goes into it, consistently falls short in their ability to accurately respond to the complexity of the world. This is not exclusive to generative AI though. It extends to other machine learning systems. For example, facial recognition systems are known to be less accurate when it comes to identifying non-white faces. Sentiment analysis, a field of AI which aims to identify emotions in pictures, speech, and writing, has become widely criticized for having little scientific basis. But notice how, unlike in the previous two sections, it doesn't really matter if the technology won't work as advertised or is based on junk science in this instance. It doesn't matter if it accidentally executes the wrong person, or family, or an entire neighborhood, because the premise itself is a farce. Israel is not fighting a righteous war against Hamas. It is trying to extinguish an entire population of people.
We have no other option but total victory. And that victory is in and within reach. I know that the overwhelming majority of the American people stand with us. I know that the overwhelming majority of Congress stands with us. I know that you stand with us. I know that you're working tirelessly, day in, day out, to get us the tools so we can finish the job faster. And on behalf of the united people of Israel, I want to say thank you, AIPAC. Thank you for everything you're doing for Israel. God bless Israel. God bless America. Thank you.
Project Nimbus has been met with internal dissent.
I'm a Google Cloud software engineer, and I refuse to build technology that powers genocide, apartheid, or surveillance!
Employees from Google and Amazon have organized under the banner of No Tech for Apartheid to protest against this project. A collective action was held on April 16th, which included sit-ins at Google offices in Sunnyvale and New York City. In response, Google fired over 50 people and issued an internal memo. I think this particular section sums up the company's position quite well.
We are a place of business, and every Googler is expected to read our policies and apply them to how they conduct themselves and communicate in our workplace. The overwhelming majority of our employees do the right thing. If you're one of the few who are tempted to think we're going to overlook conduct that violates our policies, think again.
Which is pretty wild because Alphabet's code of conduct still includes this line. Because of course, obviously the right thing to do in this situation is to continue empowering an entity that has ruthlessly butchered over 186,000 adults and children.
Oh, crystal ball, tell me what you see. Reveal the future of generative AI to me. Will the revolution take hold and come out on top? Or was this all just another tech bubble that's ready to pop?
Wow, I'm no psychic, but if big tech is adamant about generative AI transforming people's lives, they'll probably need to do something pretty drastic to fix its optics. Because right now, the general public sentiment on Gen AI seems to range from ambivalence to distrust to vehement dislike. No points for guessing which category I'm in. This is to the point that some brands are picking up on the value of being perceived as abstaining from incorporating AI. Additionally, in the face of being drowned out by AI-generated content, people are taking matters into their own hands. Kara is a, quote, social media and portfolio platform for artists that prohibits AI-generated content and pledges to abstain from using the site's content for AI training data. It was founded by Jingnan Zhang, a photographer and artist who just recently finished a long and traumatic legal battle regarding her own work being plagiarized. After it was revealed that Meta will be absorbing all public posts into its AI training data, Kara's user base grew from 40 to 650,000 users within 1 week. What's more, Kara offers integration with Glaze and soon with Nightshade, tools created by the Sand Lab at the University of Chicago that help artists protect their work from being trained on by generative AI models. On top of that, many online platforms and publishers have also started taking steps to protect their data from being scraped. In a study conducted by the Data Provenance Initiative, researchers looked at 14,000 web domains and found that 28% of the, quote, most actively maintained critical sources have blocked AI scraper bots within the past year. Things aren't looking too good for AI's cash flow either. Last year, when the hype was at its most potent, plastering AI all over your pitch deck was the surefire way to attract venture capitalists to your door.
If you do a seed deal today and you slap AI on it, investors will pay a 44% premium for that lipstick on a pig, which is basically orchestration of other people's tools than they will for a mere software company. That's what the problem is.
In 2023, a whopping $50 billion was invested in AI startups, regardless if the application of the technology actually made any sense. But now things are changing. With earnings failing to live up to expectations nearly 2 years in, investors seem to be waking up into post-hype clarity. Again. Back in June, Sequoia Capital partner David Kahn estimated that generative AI would have to pull in $600 billion in annual revenue to justify its current expenditure. In a June 2024 report by Goldman Sachs, experts casted doubts on whether generative AI will ever have the capacity to generate the kind of profit that its cost warrants. Jim Covello, head of global equity research at Goldman Sachs, did not mince his words. Some specific quotes include, quote, but 18 months after the introduction of generative AI to the world, not one truly transformative, let alone cost-effective application has been found. And that, quote, the tech world is too complacent in its assumption that AI costs will decline substantially over time. Moving up another level in candidness, Ed Zitron, CEO of EasyPR, a tech and business PR agency, has been providing scathing coverage on the state of the tech industry and forecasting the fall of generative AI since the beginning. His most recent piece, Burst Damage, spells out the writing on the wall that unless these companies come out with something that shows massive profit-generating potential, we'll probably see collapse arrive within the year. He concludes his post with a call to action to know the names of the people leading the charge of this whole disaster. So here they are.
Look, I always say this, which is we invested, we partnered when they were whatever they were, and whatever they are today, right, in terms of being a capped profit, non-profit, what have you. So I'm comfortable. I have no issues with any structure.
Are we making progress? Yes, we are. We have definitely made progress, when we look at metrics on factuality year on year. So we're all making it better, but it's not solved.
I think that there's a meaningful chance that a lot of the companies are overbuilding now, and that you look back and you're like, oh, we maybe all spent some number of billions of dollars more than we had to. But on the flip side...
Well, I have gotten a chance to take a look at your page as an image of it was entered into my GPT. I think your current photo nails it, but you could strengthen your LinkedIn page by spicing up your banner with imagery that screams innovation.
Okay, first of all, I think making money is a good thing. I think capitalism is a good thing. My co-founders on the board have had financial interest, and I've never once seen them not take the gravity of the mission seriously.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that
we don't really understand the impact that AI is going to have on jobs yet.
Well, you know, I think I've been in the Fortune dinner, I think this is maybe my third or fourth year, and we always talk about how important the environment is and how critical it is. And to get all the way there when you have to ship as many products as we do with as many trucks and, you know, the packaging and all the buildings, it's quite difficult.
At the end of the article on the impact of computers on society, Joseph Weizenbaum wrote, quote, "That technology itself determines what is to be done by a process of extrapolation, and that individuals are powerless to intervene in that determination, is precisely the kind of self-fulfilling dream from which we must awaken. It is possible, given courage and insight, for man to deny technology the prerogative to formulate man's questions. It is possible to ask human questions and to find humane answers." So, let's ask the human questions here. Do we, as a collective, need generative AI? No. I think we've established that this technology does not effectively solve any need, except maybe that $99 friend necklace. Yeah, I can see some real potential in that. Is generative AI good? Also no. On pretty much every level, AI is riddled with catastrophic ethical problems. Quite frankly, the logic of exploitation is baked into this technology at its core. A broader question to ask is, do we need machine learning systems in general? That question is out of the scope of this video, which already feels incredibly broad. However, my instinct tells me no. But what about using AI to tackle existential threats, like the climate crisis? Look at the top 3 ways Google is addressing climate change with AI: improving traffic, predicting riverine flooding, and improving traffic. Guys, you can't just write the same thing twice. Now, I'm not saying that this technology has no use. I do think, though, that improving car infrastructure is much less impactful than investing in better public transportation. I also think that being able to predict flooding is significantly less useful when governments are running out of or even cutting funding for initiatives that actually deal with flooding and its aftermath. So no, even if this technology succeeded in these applications, the broader context that machine learning exists in will render any positive impact nearly irrelevant. Any technological solution on its own that will conveniently allow for business as usual to continue will not be enough. Destroy AI might sound extreme, but when you see how this technology is made, combined with how it's being deployed, what kind of future does it inspire in your mind?